How are you? It's a Dr. Amoso. Today we want to talk about Napoleon. We want to look on Napoleon's domestic policies. We want to look on what he did domestically. So let's write this up here, Jane. Napoleon's domestic policy. Napoleon's domestic policy. So, number one, let's talk about the political reforms that were done by Napoleon. We'll start talking about the consulate. The consulate. So, when Napoleon came to power in 1799, he introduced a constitution which was known as the consulate. And in this consulate, he established himself as the first consul. So we want now to look on the constitution that he established. So at the top now, we see that there was the consulate. He was at the top. But as he was the consulate now, he established himself as the first consul. He was responsible for everything that was taking place in the country. He declared war and peace. Below him, there was the Council of State. Council of State. The members who were in the Council of State, they were appointed by Napo. This was an upper chamber which approved laws that were discussed in the lower chamber. Below the Council of State, there was the Legislative Assembly. There was the Legislative Assembly. And in the Legislative Assembly, we had members of Parliament, MPs from different political parties. This was the lower chamber. So it debated laws. After debating laws, it submitted the laws to the upper chamber, which was the Council of State. However, MPs who were in the Legislative Assembly will discover that they were voted for by the people. Then below that now, we had the tribune or the tribunate. The tribune or the tribunate. This was the system of justice. People were supposed to gather, formulate laws. It consisted of lawyers who were supposed to formulate laws that were to be used in the country. Then below that now, we had the local councils. The local councils. And in the local councils, we had supporters of Napoleon. So the councils, they were infested by the supporters of Napoleon. So this is the constitution which was called the consulate that Napoleon established. He was the first consul. He appointed members of the Council of State, MPs, those who drafted laws, and those who were in the local councils who were responsible deliberating what took place in the local councils. So from the consulate, this consulate, what are we saying? We are saying that Napoleon, he was a benevolent despot. Benevolence, we are talking about implementing reforms that were wanted by the people, being a child of the French Revolution. Despotism, we are talking about him becoming a dictator, an authoritarian, a tyrant. So we are seeing that by looking for people who assisted him in the government, he was a benevolent but our leader. He sought advice from the people. But however, despotism, we are seeing it in the sense that he avoided people in the government. Whenever laws were debated, he was there. The local councils were infested by his supporters. So this is the consulate that Napoleon introduced when he came to power. Then we move on to political reforms. We talk about 1804. In 1804, Napoleon established himself as the emperor for life. He became emperor for life. He had consolidated his power, his position in the country, and he became emperor for life. So when he became emperor for life, he was coronated. He was coronated. The Pope came and he had to coronate Napoleon. Holy oil was poured on Napoleon, and from that onwards, he was now the king of France. He possessed all the political party powers in the country. Then we move on. Newspapers, they were now censored. Newspapers were now talking about the goodness of Napoleon and the Bonapartist. Then we also talk about political parties. They were banned. Political parties, political opponents were killed in after 1804. Then also talk about liberalism. It was done away with. People were no longer free to express themselves. Why? It is because it was now a taboo to oppose or to say anything against Napoleon. So these were the political reforms that were done by Napoleon. So politically, what can we say? We are saying that Napoleon, he was despotic. He was a dictator in his political reforms. So that is what we have on the political reforms. So we want to move on and talk about the economical reforms. What Napoleon did economically when he was the leader of the country. What did he do? So let's write something. Economic reforms. Economic what reforms, what he did economically. So number one, we talk about industry and commerce. Industry and commerce. So many industries were started. These industries, they manufactured goods, they produced goods. These goods were used in the country. Some goods, they were exported to other countries. They brought foreign currency. So by so doing, he revived the economy by industrialization, by introducing so many factories and companies. Again, France became self-sufficient. Why? It is because of the goods that were produced by these industries. Commerce, we are talking about trade. Trade now started in the sense that goods that were produced, they were now traded with other countries, bringing in foreign currency, and by so doing now, France money, it became valuable. Economically, the economy thrived. Why? Because of these policies that Napoleon introduced. On top of that now, he introduced the Bank of France. The first Bank of France was introduced whereby people could go and borrow loans to start self-reliant projects. So the Bank of France, again, it was an improvement in France. But however, here on the Bank of France now, Napoleon was a benevolent despot, which I'm going to call a BD, benevolent despot. Benevolent, he introduced the reforms that we wanted to was benevolent, but appointing the governor of the Bank of France, he was despotic. He was a despotic one, leader. Then you move on, number two, you talk about the issue of rail lines. Rail lines, they were introduced. Goods train, goods train carrying commodities from one city to another. Telecommunication also improved. Hello, hello, can you bring me this good? Hello, hello, can you supply me with this product? So telecommunication, it was improved during the time of Napoleon. Number three, we also talk about agricultural productivity. Agricultural productivity, productivity in the rural areas. Farmers in the rural areas, we see that they were given impulse, they were given implements to use. So by so doing now, food was so much in abundance. There was abundance of food. Why? Because farmers in the rural areas were given inputs and implements to use. So this is what the people wanted. So by so doing now, Napoleon, we see that he was a benevolent leader. So economically now, Napoleon now did what the people in France wanted him to do. Number four, we talk about employment. Napoleon started what were known as a public works. Workers, they were given, were made to join a public works such as construction of schools, construction of bridges, rail lines. So we see so many youths now being employed through the public programs that were started by Napoleon. Some youths were absorbed in the army, some were absorbed in the police. So that was a great reform. Why? Because the people benefited from the employment creation that Napoleon introduced. So economically, what are we saying? We are saying that Napoleon, he was a darling of the people, he was a child of the French Revolution, he implemented, he introduced, he was an innovator, innovating, starting new economical programs that were embraced by the people. Although there were some elements of despotism, especially when he appointed the governor of the Bank of France. Let's move on and talk about the social reforms. On the social reforms, what Napoleon did socially. Number one, we talk about the Code Napoleon. Napoleon introduced what was known as the Code Napoleon. Code, we are talking about the formats or the ways laws were supposed to be formulated in the country. So this Code Napoleon now, we see that it was divided into civil code. It was also divided into criminal code. It was also divided into also commercial code. Commercial code. So let's start with the civil code. Civil, it dealt with civilian, ordinary people. Issues of divorce, issues of the family, issues of property, issues of inheritance. So civil code, it dealt about issues of the family. But however, here there is an element of BD. BD, what are we talking about? He was a benevolent despot in the sense that men, they were given too much power over their families. A girl child at the age of 21, Daddy, I now want to get married. A boy child at the age of 25, Daddy, I now want to get married. So men were given too much power or authority. But now, the women, during the march of women, during the course of the French Revolution, they wanted to be at par with men. But now, here we are seeing men being given too much power. So that on its own revealed that Napoleon, he was a despot. He was a dictator. But however, the criminal code, we see that it was embraced in the sense that cases of criminality, fighting, bullying, stealing, they fall under the criminal code. Commercial code, we're talking about selling of goods, we're talking about trade, importation and exportation of goods. So this was a success again to a greater extent. So here he was a benevolent leader. But however, on the Code Napoleon, there is an element of despotism. Why? These laws were known as Code Napoleon instead of Code France. Meaning to say that Napoleon, he gave these laws his name, Code Musso, Code what? So it means that he wanted glorification. These laws were supposed to be called Code France. So there is an element of despotism when you refer to these laws with his name instead of calling them Code France. Then, number two, we talk about education. On education now, we see that schools were built, elementary schools, primary schools, our secondary schools, the first university of France, polytechnical colleges, vocational training centers, lycees, semi-military schools, they were built, literacy level improved. This is what the people wanted. He was a benevolent leader. But in education, there were elements of indoctrination. Why do we say so? Subjects such as history, philosophy, and English, they were banned because they promoted critical thinking. We also see that children, they were made to believe that Napo, he was a Messiah. In the morning when they arrived, hey, come here, let's stand up. There was parading, there was the roll of drums. Roll of drums. What do you talk about? children in the morning, they learn up. Let's march. 1, 2, are you ready? Yes. Let's march. Yes. Move. Napo, napo, yeah. Napo, napo, yeah. Napo. And they'll go to their classes at 4 o'clock when they dismiss. Yeah, come, let's parade. Are you ready? Yes, ready. Let's go. Napo, yeah, yeah, Napo, napo, yeah. And they go on. So that on its own, it was an element of indoctrination. So we talk about the role of drums. Children, they were also told to spy against their parents. They were encouraged to spy against anyone who opposed what Napoleon. The girl child, they were not given equal opportunities. Napoleon to say that their duty was to bear children, do household chores such as cleaning and also washing of clothes. So here now we see that there is an element of a BD. BD, benevolent, what despotism. Education was good, but on the other side there is an element of despotism. Well, we move on. Number 3, we talk about the Concordat of 1801. This was an agreement that Napoleon signed with the church. He realized that so many people in France, they were Catholics. So for him to get a lot of support from the people, he was supposed to be in good books with the church. So he had to sign this agreement with the Pope. So the Pope came, and we see that Roman Catholic or Catholicism, it was recognized as the religion of the state. Remember, the relations between the state and the church, they were antagonized during the time of the convention, during the time of the reign of terror. So Napoleon had to establish these good relations, and he managed to get a lot of support. So here he was a benevolent despot. It was a successful reform. Number 4, we talk about the career open to talent. Open to talent. So it was again a successful domestic policy in the sense that students or people, they were encouraged to pursue areas of talent. Those who were good at tennis, those who were good at b-ball, those who were good at soccer, those who were good at singing, those who were good at dramatizing. People were encouraged to pursue areas of their talents. So this was a success. People need to expose, need to discover themselves through the career open to what? To a talent. Number 5, we talk about the Legion of Honor. Legion of Honor. Here we are talking about honoring those people who did well. So people who exceeded, people who performed quite well, they were honored through the Legion of Honor. But however, there is an element of BD. Why we say that there was an element of BD? You wanted to promote the soldiers and the police. If the police arrested so many people, order was going to be established. If the soldiers killed so many people now, it meant that his glory was going to spread all over Europe. So that is why he was quoted in D. Richards saying that men are led by choice. If you killed many people, if you arrested many people, you were given a badge. Yeah? So if you're given a badge now, it meant that if you step now, you move confidently. Why? Because I arrest, I kill. But now, that thing now, it doesn't say anything, or it does not talk on its own. But inside you, you'll be saying, I'm a champion. So you wanted the police and the army to do their work thoroughly. So you talk about the Legion of Honor. Then, number 5, you move on, you also talk about recreational. What Napoleon did in terms of recreational parks. They were established. Workers during the weekend, they could go and relax at these parks. Weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they were declared as holidays where families would go and gather and enjoy themselves. Cinemas were built. People could go and watch films, enjoy themselves at cinemas. Exhibition competitions, exhibition centers, they were started, whereby people from other countries, people from other places, they could meet and expose their cultures at these exhibition centers. So this was a success to a greater extent. So generally, that is what we have on Napoleon as domestic policies, on the social reforms. So we are saying that Napoleon's domestic policies, they were a blend of despotism and also benevolence. He was a soldier. Remember, he was a soldier. So as a soldier, obviously there were some instances where he was going to reveal himself as a dictator or as a despot. But at the same time, he was the leader of the people. He tried to win support from the people. He was now a benevolent a leader. So we are going to see that questions that comes on Napoleon, usually they want the successes and the failures of Napoleon. So the successes now is benevolence, and the failures now we are talking about despotism. So that is what we have on Napoleon's domestic policy. Thank you so much. It's Dr. Muso.